Good evening to everybody. It's wonderful to see the place jammed packed. It's fabulous. It's my honor and my pleasure to introduce an old friend of mine, Arthur Wheelock. Arthur is the curator of Northern Baroque painting in the National Gallery of Art in Washington. He's also a professor at the University of Maryland. He's written quite a number of books on Vermeer, of course, on Frans Hals, on Rubens, on Rembrandt. He has been the most active curator of the National Gallery in acquisitions, and he has built the Dutch collection in a way that it was just unbelievable. He has been absolutely fabulous. So we're very honored to have Arthur Wheelock here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you, everybody, for coming out on this lovely evening and being here at the Timken, which is such a special place. And I am very touched and honored to be invited to be part of this celebration of this wonderful painting by Vermeer. Having loved this painting from the first time I ever encountered it, one way or the other, and having had, I've been a lucky guy over the years, basically, and have had such ongoing opportunities to be around great art and to think about great art and to share those experiences with colleagues like David Bull and other great colleagues around. And every time you see a painting that you know and love, and every time you think about a painting with a friend, stand in front of it, and I'm sure most of you have had that chance here at the Timken, stand in front of this wonderful painting, look at it just by yourself or to share thoughts with a loved one, you come away a different person. You come away somehow enriched in your world and your experiences, and it's a great treasure that all of us should take advantage of over and over again in our lives. And one of the things that is wonderful is that the next time you come to see this great painting, it'll be just as exciting, and it'll be a little bit different, because you'll be a little different. The painting may not have changed, but you are a different person from one moment to the next. And those experiences you've had in your life will inform what you see. And that happens all the time. But we forget the fact that it happens with paintings. We forget the fact that that painting will somehow look different. You'll have seen a map on a wall, or you may have seen light coming into a room, or you may have seen somebody in a blue outfit. And somehow those connections will make you look differently. And then perhaps you will have only had those experiences after you've seen the painting. So you look at that blue cloak on somebody and say, oh gosh, look at the beautiful color. It looks like Vermeer's natural ultramarine. I mean, these things happen. There's a sort of give and take, going back and forth, the kind of excitement of discovery. And it's an ongoing discovery, an ongoing excitement. I've mentioned today a couple of times that I've been to the National Gallery now over 40 years. And there are a lot of paintings that I have known. They're my buddies. They hang on the wall. We go, we wave at each other. We have, how was your night? I mean, we have these little discussions. I mean, it's, people do worry about me. But anyhow, it does, it's okay. It happens, and we have our little moments, and it's right, we can do it. And yet, it's always different. You go, it's not every painting is different each time you see it, but there are certainly enough times when you go in and it's a new experience. So you have a great collection here. You have a great museum with wonderful treasures. And those kinds of experiences, those kinds of relationships are ones that you certainly can develop here on your own. But anyhow, tonight we're doing Vermeer. And we're specifically going to talk about this wonderful painting, but we're not going to start here. So I want to just let you take a deep breath. We're going to go back and to look at a different artist first, just to give you a framework for the world in which Vermeer worked. Vermeer was an artist from Delft. He was born in Delft. He spent his life virtually always in Delft, so far as we know. There are periods in which there are no documents of him being there, so we're not really entirely sure. We don't know if he studied there or not, but he was there. In Delft, this is a view of Delft. And it's by a contemporary of Vermeer's, Peter de Hoogh. And Peter de Hoogh and Vermeer, they must have known each other. They were both artists in a smallish kind of town. They both liked depictions of the world about them. They liked to paint bricks. They liked people. They have relationships. But I'm mostly at the moment showing you this wonderful painting because it captures the feeling of what Delft was like. Delft was, it's still a delightful little city with lots of canals and lots of wonderful small buildings with little courtyards. And you can see here that you are in one of those courtyards, and you have people here having a little afternoon glass of wine. There's a lady holding a wine glass, and it's always interesting. I never quite understand Dutch paintings or genre scenes because there's only one wine glass. There's never more than one wine glass. She's got it right now, so she's got it. He's looking at her, wondering when I'm going to get my turn. I mean, it's all how it sort of goes. And you have this little girl holding a little puppy in her lap. It's just the sweetest little kind of thing. And the relationship of how, of these figures. And she is sitting here in a dooryard, an archway, and a little corridor that goes from the inner courtyard to the street. And then here is a canal that goes right down that street. And on the other side is the street on the other side of the canal and door of a house on the other side of the canal. So it's very much the way Delft was. I mean, and it's just part of that ambience was a small town city, as it were. Kind of those little moments. And what you feel, and you look at Peter de Hoogh, is, my God, how did he get something so real? How does he paint those bricks? How does he paint the mortar? How does he get the different colors in the bricks? The red shutter here, the cloak, the sword hanging of this guy who's obviously just come in for the drink and hoping for that would happen. But it will happen eventually, I'm sure. But he is waiting. He's got his. But he's come in, and you can sense this sort of feeling of comfort in this world. And up here, it's interesting. There is a plaque above the door, and that's the detail of the plaque. That plaque still exists. It is in the museum in Delft, and I wrote down exactly what it says, so I would sound like I knew what I was talking about up here. And it says, in Dutch, not translated, this is St. Hieronymus Dale, the St. Jerome's Valley. St. Jerome's Valley. Yield to patience and submission, for we must first descend before being raised. So it was actually a religious sort of a world. I mean, this is a plaque that was very old, but it was there, and it gives a sense in that. So Peter de Hoogh clearly put that there in his painting, but he wanted to give that message that we have to think carefully about life, we have to think carefully about the afterlife, and all the kind of. So you have to understand that this is a very religious world. It is a very underpinning the Dutch society of life and drink and beer and smoking. There is a kind of understanding of the world we live in, enjoy it, but there is an afterlife, so we have to figure out how we're going to behave in this world. Now, it's interesting that de Hoogh paints another scene, very similar, and we find this a lot with Dutch. I keep being told by my colleagues in another Dutch painting. They all look exactly alike, So, and David's heard this, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But anyhow, there's Peter de Hoogh, and there is another courtyard, the maid bringing a little child out, and there's a lady standing in the doorway through the same kind of arch, and there is the same outdoor, and you can see across the canals another house over there. what's interesting, it's clearly a different doorway, different brick structure, different bricks down here, different view out the door, but look, lo and behold, it's exactly the same plaque. Which one's real? Neither. Neither. You cannot trust these guys. They make it up. They make it up. They are making a painting. They're making a painting with a story. They're telling a story. That plaque was what was real. That's what he wanted. He wanted to give the ambience, the feeling, but there isn't a copy of reality. So you've got to get that out of your head, that these guys are copying reality. They're not. They're making paintings. They're making a beautiful ambience. But the rhythms of the door, the perspective, they're all different. He saw reality. He saw the world. He saw bricks. He knew his father was a bricklayer, actually. So that he knew all about bricks. He knew about courtyards and how they're built. But that wasn't his point, to copy something. Now, I start with this partly so you get that idea right from the beginning, but also because there is a relationship here between figures and their spaces, the spaces they occupy. This is something these artists think about. What is the relationship between the figures? They are set there in that little space, so they have an environment. So the artists place their figures in certain environments. That is a framework. There is a context. There is a kind of comfort zone of being in that. Well, the figures in the Windhoek paintings are rather large in relationship to what you see. Vermeer paints a very similar scene called The Little Street. It's in the Rijksmuseum. People keep asking what's my favorite Vermeer. Well, it sort of depends what time of day, but it's, it is a painting that if I had to take one painting home, I might just take this one home. They actually haven't offered me the painting, but I just think it's one of those things. It's partly because when I look at this painting, it's a comfort. I like the sense of comfort in Vermeer. There's a feeling that Vermeer looked at this scene every day. It feels like, and there was some thought that he painted this from the back of his studio, that he looked across the canal, looked across onto the street on the far side of the canal, and he saw this house. He didn't see a house, excuse me. He saw a home. He saw a home because here we have people who have lived there for years. Families, generations have been there. They have worked on fixing the mortar. The bricks have split, so they've come back. They've fixed them up. You have sort of wear and tear. You have the little people in their spaces. They're doing the kind of things they do every day. This kind of feeling that you can live. This is like, I feel like this is going back to my growing up. My feeling like there's a kind of going back to a world that was important to me, that I could see the sort of rhythms of life. I could see that. And I could see the little kids down here. And they're just, playing marbles or whatever on the street below the bench. And right above the bench, you can see where people sat there over the years, and it's darkened the whitewash on the wall. The backs of their clothes have darkened that whitewash, so it's all a little bit musty. You can see the lady doing her needlework in the door, and the little maidservant in the little alley between the two houses. And so that sort of sense of having been there, and it's a sense that there is this observation of the world that is really crucial for Vermeer. But what is interesting here is it's called the Little Street. There's in fact nobody walking up and down that street. Nobody. It is a street, for sure. But what he's done is he has shown a street view that is not of non-consequential homes, really, and they're cut off. This is cut off at the top, cut off on the side, cut off on the side. they're not really identifiable. People are trying to figure out which houses these are forever. One of the big mysteries in the Vermeer scholarship, where's the little street? You know, we got to find this little street. Well, the thing about, what I like about this, even though it's cut off, you, and this is part of this comfort thing, you have no interest in going left or right. You are very happy right where you are. And why is that? And I think, to a large extent, that is because that red shutter says stop. You have gone far enough. You do not need to go one step further. In order for that red shutter to say stop, it has to be flat against the wall. So Vermeer brings the whitewash up behind it, so you see the red. So but if you look at this door, you'll see that the width between that window and the center is wider than on this side. So he's manipulated that building. They don't build buildings like that. But if this shutter were open, it would hit this lady on the head. So for that shutter to go flat, he has to have that wider space. So this building never existed. This is Vermeer doing what Peter de Hoek was doing. He's making a painting. He's making a feeling to this painting. So you have that rhythm, blue, blue, red, stop. You have up here, closed shutter, closed shutter, closed shutter, open shutter, black, stop. Subtle little things. This is the problem with Vermeer. He's so damn subtle. You never can, you know, it takes years of just looking at these things and suddenly one day, oh my God, I never noticed that. And that has happened to me so many times over my life. And that, interesting, up there, that shutter, this is what's called a reflectogram. And it is a way of looking at the way, behind the paint, underneath the paint, of what the artist did at an earlier stage. And this is a reflectogram of this little area up here, and there's the black, i.e. open shutter. This shutter to the left, which is now closed, you can see was once half open. And he said, no, I don't want it half open, I want it closed. To give that rhythm, close, 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 open. So he's thinking and he's making changes in the process. Another nice, interesting little change is this lady in the alley. So here is a reflectogram of the maid, and I don't know if you can make it out, but there used to be a lady sitting in the doorway. See her head, her eyes, she's leaning down, there's a hand, she's doing needlework, and there's her skirt, and this is a detail of the, you can even make her out, you can even see there's her knees, right there. So there was a lady there, but he decided, no, I need that alley. I need to kind of push back, have that a clear structure, and have that, which is very important, that diagonal of the gutter going back, because that gives you depth. It makes you realize this is not just a facade, but there's a building. There's a depth to that whole little thing. So he has to have that and have that good structure. He takes that lady out and thus gives that structure to the painting. So if you don't see it in the walls of the Rijksmuseum someday, you know where to look. Anyhow, this is, part of this is just to sort of encourage you to look and look and look and not be afraid to think that you have done everything you can do when you look at paint. There's always new things to discover. I mean, I'm giving you tonight a little bit of a synopsis of a lot of years, of the oh my God experiences. I mean, these kinds of things that just are part of the joy of learning and living and having these paintings speak back, wave at you in the morning, and have that kind of relationship. Now, the similar thing is in this wonderful painting that's in the Queen's collection in England, and it is a wonderful interior view. So now we've looked at exterior, now we look at interior, but Vermeer's thinking pretty much along the same lines. But here we see what is an interesting facet of Vermeer in terms of creating space and the perspective, little angle we saw in the little street. So here clearly is very strong perspective, and he has placed these figures, a lady playing the harpsichord and the gentleman who was next to her, and I used to think that he was listening or teaching, but actually now I think they are singing. There's a duet. I'm not sure, but this is a whole other thing about music and how music was written, and music always was written to have words with it. And I've once did a lecture where we had music played, and we had the songs being sung that were sung when the music was being played. And the structure of Dutch music is very much, you know, a block, building a block, another block building upon each other. So you have these blocks building up, and the structure of this painting is all about blocks building up and creating a kind of environment to bring focus, particularly to this lady as she's standing there in the depth of that room. But that perspective of all of these orthogonals takes you back to her. They kind of encouraged you, the viewer, to come back to that center focus of the painting. You're not supposed to be part of the experience. You are blocked from them. There's a table, there's a bass viola on the floor, a blue chair. All these things give them privacy. This is one thing that Vermeer wants often to help hold us, the viewer, back from the experiences of the painting, so that we can look at, but we allow them to have that privacy, that moment together. That is crucial to the whole sense of that painting, and what Vermeer wants us to understand, that kind of connections that they are establishing through music in this wonderful painting. But so Vermeer thinks about perspective, and he thinks about where that perspective is leading you. And so all of these orthogonals go back to a single vanishing point. And the single vanishing point in this painting is right on this lady's sleeve. And we know that because there's a pinprick at that very place. So we can, well, you know, because you can do the, you know, math and you can copy it. But there is a pinprick there. So we know that he was thinking about that, and we know that he wanted that pinprick, that vanishing point, to exist right there on her sleeve. To think about perspective and what it means, and what the perspective is to take you where you need to go. And that's what the artist is really trying to do with that thing. Now, Vermeer has wonderful techniques and materials, and that kind of manages to paint the incredibly smooth vase. I mean, beautiful, you know, almost as though, oh my gosh, he's really just, you know, taken that ceramic vase and let it breathe slightly onto the canvas. And then other times he can have very thick, rough paint to create textures of the nubs of the rugs that are there. And this is a detail of that. You can sort of see the kind of little wonderful manipulations of paint, and thick paint and thin paint, all brought together to give you a character of the materials that he is trying to create. He also figures out where to place these, where like where the red shutter goes, because here he has this beautiful vase, but he makes shapes between that figure and the vase. They're kind of parallel shapes. So these shapes between objects become very important in sort of tying together elements in the painting. Now these are carefully calculated. I mean, it's so interesting how, when I started studying Vermeer, nobody ever dreamed that he made changes in his paintings. They all kind of looked like they were breathed on the canvas as finished things. It was really a sense of that, wow, they're so perfect. But the idea that he actually thought about it and changed things to make them perfect seemed to be, was never in the consciousness. But the more we did studies of X-rays and infrared reflectography and other, we found, well, a lot of changes, actually, a lot of changes. And here is a reflectogram of this gentleman where he's standing up quite straight. But maybe you can make it out, he used to bend forward, that's his head, and his arm was over there. Can you see? He was much closer, leaning toward leaning toward the lady to get a closer connection. Vermeer decides, no, I want to pull them up. I don't want that kind of relationship established. I want a more, within the framework and the depth of the room, they need to have this verticality to both of them. The other interesting thing in the reflectography, which is one of the curious things of this painting, is she's looking down at the keyboard. But in the mirror, she's looking at him. Oh my God, what's going on? Did he just screw up big time? Well, in the reflectogram, you can actually see from the, I'm sure nobody in the back can see this, but anyhow, take my word for it, their head was initially turned. You can see her hair band off to the left there now and the instrument going through it. So her head, initially, she was turned to look at him. And he was closer to her. So there was an intimate relationship. Now, he's pulled them apart, but he's kept her looking. I don't think he just screwed up, actually. I think that this is all about extending time. This is another moment when she's looking at him. And he gives in that, allowing that different reflection in the mirror from the reality of what she is now doing, looking down at the keyboard, to give you a feeling that there is an extension of time, a psychological connection that is there to reinforce that if you're not going to have the figures bending toward each other. I mean, there is a very conscious decision that I'm going to do this and I'm going to leave that, and this is going to somehow make it different. Now, Vermeer doesn't ever tell you what he's doing, so we're just extrapolating, trying to figure it out. But so you don't need to believe me, but it's kind of one of these things that I think that's right. You know, it's one of these, and the nice thing is, of course, that we all can look at these as we come of our own experiences, look at these paintings with our own eyes and our own experiences, and we come up with our own stories, because he doesn't tell you who this lady is, who he is, what their relationship, are they singing, are they playing, is he a teacher or not, or all these things. He gives you some clues. He gives you some clues that what is there, and this whole mirror thing is part of a clue, the kind of build-up of music, the kind of structure of music, the fact that there is another instrument there on the floor, maybe says something, this beautiful vase with no glass in this case, no glass at all. There's a painting on the wall over here, which has a little bit symbolic message. I mean, I'm not going to get into symbolism here, but there is a kind of things that come in different ways in the way he structures. But there is something else about the time. I'm really into time, and I'd like to focus on that in this lecture a bit, because one of the wonders of this painting is, of course, light. And talking about light, and I want to talk about light and the relationship to time, because you have this beautiful room and this white wall that's up here, and light streaming across here, the shadows of this mirror on double shadow that you see here. You have a strong shadow down here, shadows. He's thinking about shadows a lot. And you can see light coming through the window and the shadows, the sort of light edge of the shadow here that is coming down, a bluish shadow. This is something I hope you've noticed in the painting, the blue shadows. In reality, and this, in case you didn't recognize it, is the painting and the modern reproduction. This is the top of the virginal. This is the leg of the virginal. There's a windowsill. There's a window over here, and there's light coming through that window. And what do you notice about the shadows? They all go the same direction. They don't go, one doesn't go down and the other go across. There's also, at the top of the window, a shadow. There is no shadow there at all. That light goes flooding across. So he is manipulating light every bit as he's manipulating color, scale of objects, space, everything. And so what happens then is that light goes down, hits there, that shadow goes there, light goes streaming across. What it does is it locks that time that exact time in space. So it locks that light, it connects to the instruments, it becomes a specific place. There is no shadow. In fact, there should be shadows of the legs. I mean, there are all sorts of things that are wrong in the shadows down below as well. I mean, everything about light in this painting is, it's Vermeer light. It's not wrong. It's Vermeer light. It's not what you will get in reality. It's Vermeer using light to create effects. Now, here we are, finally get to our wonderful painting that all of us now have had a chance to wave at and get to know and have her wave back when she's not busy reading, but she is, in fact, very busy reading. And I have always felt the power of that expression of engagement in this letter that this young woman has received. In the way she stands there, in this cylindrical, triangular form, a very solid form. She is not about to move. Her hands have come close to her side. They push against her dress. Her thumbs push down on the sheet of the letter that she's reading in a way that sort of tells there is a kind of tension in her hands as that she holds it. This letter is significant to her. It's not just a random letter. There is a real sense that this is an important letter. And what's interesting is that it came unexpectedly. It was clearly she was standing at her table about to do her toilet in the morning, dress her, put her pearls around her neck, and what you see are the pearls there and the blue ribbon of the pearls, but lying on, there's a back side of the pearls, lying on top of the pearls is another page of the letter. See, that is it's folded in exactly the same way as the top. So that is their two-page letter. A subtle little thing. I had never seen this, and I only know this because one of my students picked it out for me. Did you notice that? Yeah, oh my God, no, I never noticed that all these years. So that's why it's nice to share these experiences. Somebody's going to see something that you never dreamed of seeing. So as a letter has come.
Is she pregnant?
Is she pregnant?
I always thought she was pregnant.
Well, she may be. She may be. It may be the expectancy letter and the maps from somebody. I mean, I didn't think she was pregnant for a long time because usually Dutch artists make clear that somebody's pregnant because the way they use their dress, and this is. But I did have a very good colleague, an art historian who's a professor at Delaware who came, and we were talking about the Vermeer painting at the National Gallery, the woman with balance, and has pretty much the same shape this lady does. And she was 7 months pregnant, and she was standing in front of this painting. Something about the way she stood. Anyway, it may be important that she's pregnant or not. I don't think that is. Maybe it's important. I don't know. You know, it's one of these things that you can tell your story either way. You can tell it as a pregnant woman or not, and it works. It doesn't matter really, but it could reinforce the idea of expectancy in a letter and what does it mean and all that. So I'm not going to deny the possibility that she's pregnant. But I don't know really. You know, I don't know. But what I can say is that pregnant or not, expecting or not, she's never going to move. She's never going to move. And part of the reason she's never going to move is because that bar, her hands are right on top of that strong horizontal bar. That bar locks her hands in space. That's not accidental. That those hands are there, that bar is there. It also, she's locked in space because of the shapes between shapes. We saw that a little bit with the vase and the man, but look at the shape. Look at that shape. All these shapes are important. This is something that Vermeer does that most of these other Dutch artists don't do, is that he uses these shapes between shapes, these negative shapes, to lock a figure in space, to create patterns that are consequential all the way through the painting. There's not a consequence of object versus the negative world. I mean, these all are important. It is extremely important to making the character and rhythms and strength of this image. It's also interesting, it doesn't come up so much in this slide, but you saw it with the love letter, or the music lesson, that there is a subtle little feeling, and the way light is, and the way the subtle shadow, the blue shadow that came down from the middle of that window in the music lesson, if you go back to the painting, you can see it's there. Again, I never noticed that until we did the Vermeer show in 1995. We had this painting together in the same room with the music lesson. And oh my God, there's the shadow. You know, it's the same shadow. But it's this observation. This is interesting. Observation's amazing. And looking at shadows. I mean, look at the way the shadows work on this chair. Incredible blue shadow, light blue, and how he paints the wall and has a blue glaze going over the white, and then down here in the deeper part of the shadow, there's no white of the wall underneath the blue. It's all the dark imprimatur layer. Here you can see the way it's done over. You can see the highlights here. How we saw the texture of the rug on the table. The same interest in all this sense of light and the character of light. These are all things that he's thinking about. Light coming in, light there, light all the way through. What's very interesting, of course, is that she doesn't cast any shadow at all. You don't think about that. And we know where she's standing because this map is known. I've been to Hoorn, it's in Hoorn. I've seen the map, it's a big map. We know that because of the type of room and the table is, she is right next to that wall. She should be casting a shadow. No shadow. In fact, not only is there no shadow, but behind the painting you can see that Vermeer has created a very soft, diffused white contour line. Go look at that. It's amazing. On the back of this woman, there's a white contour line. It's lighter there, you know, than it ever should be. It should never have that. But this is an artistic device, the softness to create the sort of roundness of the form, but it's also to separate her out from the whole transience of time. She doesn't cast a shadow. She is somehow, she's part of that world, but she's yet somehow slightly different from that world. Subtle little things that you never, you know, you just, oh my gosh, how does he think of this? Now he thought about this long and hard because initially he painted a different jacket on her. And we go back to a reflectogram, infrared reflectogram one more time, and this is a reflectogram, and you can see the jacket came out further, and they had little puffs of fur trim, and that's exactly the fur trim of the woman in the balance at the National Gallery. So this is a painting that I live with every day. This is one of my good friends that I check in on all the time, and how are you doing? Amazing painting. Rather like the woman that you have here, woman in blue. They were painted about the same time. A woman standing in the corner of a room, concentrated on a certain activity. A object behind her, a map, in this case a painting of the Last Judgment. And this is an interesting instance and very clear that the painting in the back wall has a connection to the activities of the woman in the room. Because you have a lady holding a balance. and you have the Last Judgment. And this is, she's standing exactly where St. Michael would be, weighing the souls, good and bad. So this is genre to a certain extent. This is like The Woman in Blue. It is a scene of daily life. On the other hand, it's also allegory. It's also really pushing reality to abstract concepts of good and bad, values, why do you... Vermeer had lots of choices. He had a choice of what she was going to wear, where to put her, what painting to put on the back wall. That was a conscious choice to put a Last Judgment painting there. That's something that we have to sort of keep in mind. These artists had choices. They could have made any choices, but they made certain choices, certain decisions, and those decisions were made for intent. And with an artist like Vermeer, you are damn right sure that there was intent. Somehow, there's an accident, I'm sure that happens. It always happens with artists, but there's a lot of intent going through this work. And this was... It was a long time called the gold weigher. Well, it turns out there's no gold in those scales. It was a long time called, one-weighing pearls. There's no pearls in them. They're empty. They're empty. She has gold and pearls in front of her. That's her jewel box, and there's pearls there. She has all of these temporal treasures in her world. She lives with them. We all live with treasures of some type or other in our lives. But just like that plaque on the Peter de Hoogh painting we started with, you have to think about life and what the afterlife. So this painting is all about choices. The choices one has to make in life, measuring, balancing your connections to the physical world, the treasures, the worldly treasures, and the afterlife, the judgment that will befall all of us. It's interesting to remember that Vermeer in this Protestant world was a Catholic. And there are lots of questions about pregnancy and all sorts of things, blue, virgin blue, and all these questions about how far can we push that. And you have to be a little careful, but still, remember that that's all part of the story. But so that whole question about why, intent, and so just like the woman in blue, her judgment, her hand holding that scale will never move. It's right there on that horizontal and on the vertical, right there at the junction. Perspective. We looked at the vanishing point with the music lesson. Okay, there's a mirror. The vanishing point goes right to the hand. There's a little pinprick right there. Because of the perspective, that hand will never move. That hand is right in the exact center of the painting. It'll never move. If it's on the vertical and the horizontal, it'll never move. She is there forever. She is there forever. And in that sense of being there forever, which is also crucial to our understanding of Woman in Blue, she is given a certain dignity and importance. It goes beyond a scene of a woman in an interior. There's something that is so measured about that we have to pay attention. And with the Woman in Blue, and I apologize I didn't mention this, but this is crucial to understanding Woman in Blue, we all have read letters. We've all stood in the corner of a room with lights until we could read a letter. And we do that without thinking about it. We do that and it sort of passes, and it's one of these activities. We don't think. Vermeer saw that moment, and he made it important. He made it very important. And because we do that same thing, and we can associate ourselves with that activity, looking at a painting like that makes us realize, damn it, I do that. I'm important. There's a kind of sense of that feeling emanating from that painting and this painting, and making you sense that somehow your place in this world, your passage through the world, is of consequence. Every little activity that you're involved with somehow is of consequence. And that is a kind of the magic of these paintings, that you come away a different person, a stronger person, a better person, an enhanced individual. And part of this, of course, is light. We go back to light, this wonderful light, the Windhoek light coming through the window. Oh, there she is. There she is. Soak it in. Think about what this painting can do for all of us. The light. I'll come back to light, because light is a quite stunning thing in this painting. This light comes through the window in the upper left here. It hits the thick part of the curtain, and it's dark. You see a little bit of light from the direct light, the thick part of the curtain, and then the orange glow at the edge of the curtain. Look at that subtlety of light. And you follow the light down, and it hits the table, it hits the pearls, it hits the gold. It is captured, it goes by the scales. The arm holds you and then brings you back up to this incredible, beautiful, serene head of this one. So it kind of, it sweeps down and comes up and around. It's one of the glorious sense of the rhythms of light that are part of the way Vermeer conceives his works. This is only possible because, like the Woman in Blue, the painting has been restored, and we can see some of the magic that was at one point obscured. And there is an individual in this room, that Mr. Bull, I think his name is, who worked together with me very closely to make that happen, to make that kind of flow happen in this painting. I just want to show you the difference between this painting before and after restoration. Oh yeah, it's a wow, isn't it? It's a wow experience. There are lots of subtle differences. One is that, of course, the color that you see, and so you lose sense of depth. You lose all sorts of elements of the experience. You lose the luminosity that we've been talking about. We figured out that the painting was expanded on the sides, and so now it's been framed in tighter to the figure, so those spaces between spaces that are so important were enhanced as a result of that. But the most amazing difference, of course, is we are lacking those gold bands in the frame. So that sweep that is so important doesn't exist in the same full dimension that it does now. So we looked at this with X-rays. This is an X-ray. It shows different densities. So different densities, lead white. Here are the nails holding the canvas onto the stretcher, and that's just you see the weave of the canvas because of the density of the ground. But you also see here these two little white bands that tell you, oh my gosh, something's behind there that we don't know about. And so very carefully, this is during restoration, we found the edges were overpainted entirely, so the paint has been removed. And right here you can see David working very carefully. You don't see David working carefully, but right there is with a scalpel taking off this overpaint and finding underneath these gold bands that allowed this painting to live and breathe and have this experiences today again. So David, thank you very much on all our behalf for making that happen. But I just want to leave you all now with we come back to this painting, spend just a moment just thinking about it, and enjoying this amazing opportunity that you all have to come and see one of the great masterpieces of the world. On loan here for a while. It's only here till September, so take advantage of it. Paintings live and breathe as we live and breathe. The experiences will keep evolving and changing. Don't be afraid that you've seen it and it'll be boring the second time. That's not going to happen, I guarantee you. Come with open mind, open hearts, open soul. Enjoy this great work. Enjoy the other wonderful treasures that you are able to live with on a daily basis here in San Diego. Thank you very much.